AI is of general purpose, so can be used for a lot of business cases. And 3, AI is being adopted at a really high speed. Actually, and this is one of the things that I think is important for today's discussions, we are using AI, but we don't fully understand the impact of AI. I don't mean technological AI, I mean the social, the economic impact AI has. So this is why discussions like the one we're going to have today are very important. In that sense, we are going to speak about the use of AI in the public administration, but we are not going to speak about the use of AI for mainly efficiency purposes. You know, we can use AI to automatize processes, to have robots that are able to fill forms faster. No, we're going to speak about the use of AI in something that is the core business of the public sector, which is the production of legislation. That's what the government does. The government is the industry that produces legislation, and we're going to see how AI can impact it. We're going to do it in 2 ways. To see how AI can be used to define what are the policies to detect the alarms, to be able to design better policies. And we're going to use to discuss also about how we can use AI for drafting. These are 2 phases, let's say, about the policy making process in which AI can play a role. We're going to do it with 2 different panels full of expertise. Really happy to be here hosting you. And I think the discussions of today are going to be very fruitful. Before we start, I want to mention some house rules, because if not, the colleagues that are managing the session will not be happy with me. First of all, this session is going to be recorded. As the session is going to be recorded, I would like to check if somebody is not in favor of this or against this, and he or she will be able to say it now. If not, we will start the recording of the session right away, so it's available later for the rest of the colleagues. From the recording, I want to mention that it's working. Yeah, I want to mention that we are going to have not only an unilateral session, but it will be a bilateral one. So this means that we also expect you from the audience to interact with us. So this is the Slido that we are going to use. So I invite you to either your computer, your tablet, or your phone join to this hashtag SEMIC 2023 GRPM. So you can also join the conversation. We'll be able to ask questions, but we are also going to ask you questions. So be ready, refresh your knowledge, because you are also going to be asked to participate in the session. So that's the recording. The Slido, we'll be coming to the Slido in a moment. And the last thing I want to remind you is the agenda. We are going to be here for 4 hours. It's a very intense workshop, so I have a very difficult task, which is to act as the timekeeper of the different speakers today and make sure that we do it on time. Also, 4 hours is a lot of time, so we have planned a break in the middle, so we can also refresh our minds and do a bit of networking. So there will be a first introduction that I will be handing over to in a second. There will be a first panel with the colleagues that are already with me in the table, focusing on AI in the design of policies. Our coffee break, AI in legal drafting, as I mentioned, as a second phase of the production of regulation, and then roundtable and discussions with the different members of the panels. So this is what we have in the menu today. And in that sense, and without further delay, I would like to hand it over to Javier Hernández Díez. Javier Hernández Díez is the Deputy Director General, in the Spanish Ministry of Justice. He is going to speak about the use of AI in field of justice and law enforcement. He's not only, I would say, somebody experienced in the field of justice. He has been working in the Ministry of Presidency. He was one of the precursors of the use of LEOs, one of the tools of the Commission inside the Spanish administration. So he's somebody that has been, I would say, a driver of digital transformation in the public sector. So Javier, the floor is yours, and let's start with the discussions.
Good afternoon, everyone. First thing I'd like to say is thank you, SEMIC, for giving me the opportunity of talking in this interesting workshop. And thank you all for giving me some minutes to listen to me, and I will try to do my best to not do too much. And the first thing I'd like to say that when I saw the title of the workshop, I felt really inspired, because the relationship between my work, my actual work that is working in the administration of justice and its digital transformation is very powerful, very well connected. And the first thing I'd like to talk is about justice. This is not very well known, is I will say. Only 8% roughly of population go to court anytime in life. Is that 100% population eventually go to justice at least one or twice, hopefully, time in life, because you go to the civil registries. Births, nationality, and marriages are inscribed and written, so you can access the public services as Spanish, French, English, wherever, right? And between other services, you can either criminal records, you have to get birth records, but also that you don't have any sexual offense in your past. You should work with children, right? But also notaries, registrars, or when you want to get divorced, hopefully not, when you have to pay alimony, or when you have a company and that company goes into bankruptcy. And you can see the history of justice is the history of the conflict. And the conflict gets its remedies with legislation. So where is the point where you can pay? And so I think this workshop is really useful. If you put your work in advance, I think can be very interesting. So I have considered with this keynote, when I saw keynote, I felt really impressed, because I don't think my speech can be considered a keynote. But anyway, I appreciate it. And when I thought about this workshop, I thought two impacts that your work could be really useful to the administration of justice. First one is the impact that the good writing of legislation can do for the digital legal security in our processes, in our legislation. And in the other sense, how the AI in administration of justice and its regulation can impact on the social and economic livings of our citizens. So I think it's quite important. When I talked about challenges, because Carlos told me, don't be worried, you'll throw a challenge so people can think about it. Okay, these are my two challenges. Quite easy, as you can see. I think you can solve them just this afternoon. But the first challenge I give to you is they use the AI to foster an understanding of legislation that improves that legal security. I don't know if you know, but one of the main vectors of justice is the economic vector. For instance, the 35 biggest companies of Spain have blocked 9,000 million euros just in legal provisions. That blocked money that is not invested in creating employment or creating other services, right? But also there are very strong studies that correlate. If we could reduce 1% justice delay, there would be thousands of new apartments to rent in the biggest cities of Spain. So there is a strong correlation between digital legal security or legal security. Now everything is digital, so security and economic welfare of the country. And also the second challenge is the use of automation to improve the functioning of justice. And this is my challenge in my current employment, basically. But the main global challenge, of course, is to gain efficiency and to improve the accessibility of justice. Because there is another vector of impact about accessibility, and I think AI is not for it, is that when it's very hard to access to justice, only people with resources, economic resources to pay a lawyer, to pay another person to do for him or her, is who is going to access to those public services. So using AI can improve equality among citizenship of our countries, right? So don't be afraid when you get someone in justice world, justice ecosystem that is going to say to you, AI is going to destroy our employment, because I think there is another to protect the citizens' welfare, the citizens' equality, right? And when we are doing the Ministry of Justice, I will not last much longer, so don't worry, I'm going to start by the end, is that when we have started to use AI, we have considered AI as a point in the automation roadmap, right? And if we start with the results, I have to say that in only 2.5 years, we have saved to the administration of justice more than 280,000 hours of work. And in 2021, we only got 28,000 hours of work saved. In 2022, that number raised to 68,000 hours of work. And this year, about 168,000 of hours of work. Work that couldn't be done because the workload of the judicial bodies couldn't afford it. So we were leaving behind citizen rights, public administration obligations, or because we were taking too much solving some issues. For instance, we have solved 280,000 Spanish nationality procedures that were waiting. There are 280,000 people, families, waiting for a Spanish nationality that they were entitled. So we are changing lives with automation. We are changing lives with AI. Okay. When we are talking about criminal recourse cancellation, we are talking that we have cleaned automatically 422 criminal records. Those people, those families can now access to public employment or public housing, the rights they have, they are entitled to get. So when we mix all those paths, automation, classic automation, robotics, with AI, we get huge results. We are expecting to get in the 2024, 20 million impacts. These are procedures. How? How is that? Because we are using artificial intelligence for automatic document classification, automatic registry classification. We are detecting automatically the interveners of a judicial procedure, so you have to type them. And we are doing automatic summarizing of every document that go in or out the judicial system. And just in case you don't know, this is much, much, much bigger than any other public body you could ever meet. You can think about tax, but that's not big enough. The number of notifications in the system in Spain is twice bigger, much bigger than the tax financial system we have in the country. So you don't realize how the functioning of data regulation, how the regulation can be improved with techniques. I don't mind the technique that AI is perfect, can impact on the Department of Justice, so in the welfare of our citizens. And I just put that slide in order to get an enumeration of the different initiatives that we are working on. And I'd like only to point out them. There is audio to text system, so we can record every hearing. These are systems, so we can look for the text or the moment somebody said anything in the hearing. But also we are putting in blue, you can see, we are using AI to extract indicators, the judicial document, to create a database, indicators to create public policies. And the other thing is that we are looking with a ChatGPT search for prosecutors and for judges in order they can look for information in a natural way without having to put into data all those documents. Of course, the future of the judicial system is to turn from documents to data. But in the meantime, we can use AI to get it done for us. Now I'm finishing. Of course, all this is not possible if we don't change. The organizational changes maybe are the most difficult and of course the most important. So I think that, like Carlos said before, nobody knows exactly how the AI works. Even us, that we are technical people, know how AI can work, because you get different results every time you use AI, generative AI, for instance, right? But just think about a lawyer, you think about a judge or a magistrate walking by the streets. You will see that they know anything about the AI. So I think we have to put the building blocks in order to get a fair use. And how can we do that? First thing we did in 2022 was to publish a data space for justice manifest. So we signed all the autonomous regions of Spain, but also the General Council of the Judicial Power of Spain, but also the Prosecutor Office signed a document that put the basement to create a public data space of justice. That is, by the way, is in datos.justicia.es. You can consult, you can query the information we are publishing in order to get an ecosystem that foster development, and why not the use of those data with AI systems in order to improve the functioning on the data system and in last systems to create public policies. And the second thing we have to do, things like this, of course, to communicate, but also to create congresses. In 2022, we created the first congress in Salamanca that was called Justicia y Derecho en Datos, Justice and Law in Data. And we focused precisely in the manifesto, how to use the data in order to improve our lives, to create public policies. But this year, we focused in the Data Forum Justice 2023 with artificial intelligence. And we mixed up all together, just magistrates, prosecutors, lawyers, universities, and so on. A lot of people who wanted to invest some of their time in order to know how AI works. So that is my speech. I hope you don't get much more. And you have another last slide in order to get the challenge. We have to get, that is create a data space with a lot of data, initial data, in order to use AI to detect the gaps we can easily solve with AI, and also how to can reduce the litigation and so on. Thank you very much.
I keep this using AI for changing people's life for the good. So very inspiring, Javier. Now I will call Zsofia. Zsofia is a team leader in Digit. She is in charge of the digital ready policy making. So she's trying to bring multidisciplinarity, the challenge of making policies, let's say, up to our digital world. So Zsofia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So indeed, just after Javier's, for me, very keynote speech with a lot of food of thought and challenges placed out there. And before deep diving into our first session on digital ready policy AI, let's stop a little bit to see what exactly we mean by digital ready policy making in the Commission, why we think it's important to deal with it, how to approach it, when, and eventually where we see AI could help. So digital ready policy making is basically bridging the gap between policy design and policy implementation. We heard now very concrete implementation examples from Javier, and that all these should be fed back timely in the new policy design. Because policies, when implemented, they most probably nowadays will get data flows and digital systems together. And if the policy makers think, okay, let's deal with these implementation things, leave them for the techies after we pass the law, then in reality, a lot of problems will emerge, certainly interoperability, digital implementation problems. So to avoid that and really go for digital ready policy making, we call on our policy officers to think of this implementation, all the and digital angles, technical angles early on in policy making, and that is what gives digital ready policy making. It's not something brand new. It's basically built on the existing, well-established policy making processes of administrations, but it's the digital ready mindset. So that we start talking with each other, implementers, those who are close to the ground with IT and data knowledge, and those who are nowadays often in their ivory tower designing new policy. And why to do all that? First and foremost, because as we heard from Javier, even a digital world, it's happening. And in this digital transformation, administration have the obligation to, on the one hand, maybe tame the challenges and the risks, but also harvest potential and benefits. So as we are in the interoperable universe, our upcoming Interoperable Europe Act will incentivize further this digital ready thinking, because there will be a very interesting instrument, interoperability assessment, which will require public administrations to do a kind of assessment of the interoperability impact decisions which will touch upon IT systems feeding cross-border public services. And we need to deal with it not only because it's kind of a must and happening, but also because it brings tangible benefits. We can expect much more coherent policies if we start thinking in advance how it fits to the existing digital policy framework. Exactly efficiency, hopefully cutting through automation burden. Also, it can give room for experimentation, but at the other side, even if those who say, no, it's not my cup of tea, AI or whatever, go for future-proofing, technology neutrality. It sets something in rule which prescribes a specific technology and which will become your constraint in the future. So with all that, we in the Commission have set up a kind of framework which you can find in the so-called better regulation guidelines of Commission policymakers, which has these 6 components and an underlying enabling layer. I will not go through them one by one. If you are interested, hope so. We have a nice online training with also a cute and short animation explaining all of them. What I would like to draw your attention to do is the third component, solely principle and reuse of data. So this is our hook and justification to be here today in the SEMIC environment, because what we do, we also explain to policy officers that they need data people. They need to think what data they need right now to design a new policy, but also what kind of data flows will they trigger with their new policy. Think of reporting obligations, which can be super burdensome for many businesses, administrations as well. So think first what I have, what I can reuse, and go to the semantic level, use concepts, use existing data standards. The other building block interesting for us today is the 5th one, innovate and digital technologies. So we also inspire, let's go for experimentation, use regulatory sandboxes, give room for new technologies. And of course, we are absolutely aware that it cannot be a one-man show. So one poor policy officer will not solve all these challenges. So he needs this multidisciplinary team around him. And this exactly links with all this slow cultural change. That we break the silo and we start working together. So when to deal with digital-ready considerations, first and foremost, in any policy domain. It's not just digital policies as such. Any policy, you want a new rail transport system, go for digital-ready. And as we heard already from Carlos, which phases of the policy cycle? Today, we will zoom into the policy design after my talk, and after the coffee break, policy formulation, basically legal drafting. But we shouldn't forget about policy implementation, because this is this richness of information, what's happening on the ground and what are the challenges policymakers need to tackle, and the policy monitoring and evaluation phase, which will eventually create the data for policy officers, create the new evidence. So as I said, today in this workshop, we will focus on policy design, policy formulation, and if you pay attentively, already in this panel, we will a bit touch upon on policy monitoring and creating evidence through reporting obligations. And I already invite you to join us tomorrow in our panel session on digital-ready policymaking and LUAS code. We will move further with policy formulation, policy implementation, eventually discovering LUAS code. So, and just before closing, I will give you some of the potential use cases. I already mentioned LUAS code, which can come somewhere in policy formulation and policy implementation, but already in policy design. Our next speakers will tell what are their needs in Denmark to call in AI and feed a whole new process of revising existing legislation. Then in policy formulation, we will hear from the LEOS colleagues the smart functionalities where AI can come in. And then we already heard robotic process automation in Spain. And it can go further, automated compliance checking. It will be also covered in tomorrow's panel. And eventually reporting obligations and evidence identification for new policies. So many use cases, and it's really a kind of inspiring, exciting area. I'm glad to be here and listen and learn with you. Thank you.
It's really nice also to hear that we have to think on implementation in a digital world in any policy. And we have listened to Javier and Zsofia, and they are basically saying that we need to design when and how we design policies that are ready to make the life of our citizens better. And this is what is the next panel about. So we're going to discuss about the use of AI in policy design. We're going to have 5 speakers on this panel, but before I give the floor to the first ones, I want to explain a bit of some of the house rules. So on the one hand, you can ask at any moment any question you might have to the speakers, either to Javier or Zsofia or to the rest of the members of the panel. You do that in Slido, and we will be asking the questions later on. But also, we will be making you a question that will be linked to the presentation of each one of the members of the panel. The first one, linked to the presentation of Kristoffer and Thomas, is the following one. It will be in Slido. Are you aware of efforts in your member state or institution to use any of the following to target direct efforts at improving interoperability across policy areas? Manual reviews, assessment conducted by working groups, automatic screening supported by generic AI, like natural language processing, identification of common patterns, making up legal text and creation of structured data on the top of legal text, or any other AI endeavors. So this is the question that the members of the panel are putting to you. So put your brains in action. And now, without further delay, I am introducing Kristoffer Olsen, that is heading the Secretariat for Digital Legislation in the Agency for Digital Government in Denmark, together with Professor Thomas Hidebrandt, which is a professor in the Department of Computer Science in Copenhagen University, and also founder of and former head of the Software Data, People and Society section, and also now the head of the Data Steward Education at the same university. So Chris and Thomas, please take the stage, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for our introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today, to be able to present where we are for part of practitioners, and we thank you both the presidency and the commission for the opportunity to look forward to hearing your input to the debate. Right. So I'm here today representing a policy support unit in the Danish context. We support the Danish legal drafters and policy officers in ensuring that the legislation and the policies that are presented before Parliament end up being digital ready to the extent possible. Why is that a good thing? Well, I think Zsofia explained it already very well. Today's digital reality, you really have to make sure that you take advantage of the opportunities offered by new solutions while avoiding all the potential pitfalls in this new world where solutions and technologies may be so new that we haven't even seen the downfalls of them yet. We don't know how mature we are relative to handling them. There has to be some support mechanisms for the policy officers and legal drafters to ensure that they've been all the way around. And that's basically our mission, to do that. We're getting there. That job is one of the examples of work in the public sector that maybe doesn't get done completely, if you understand what I mean. There are some very formal obligations for when a file has been, or when a resolution is reached relative to a citizen or a user. There are some legal requirements and so on, legal safeguards for when a case or a file has been settled. But in the area of making good policy, it's really a sort of a, more diffuse. When is the policy sufficiently digital ready? There's no hard bottom line there. There's a lot of work that can go undone or not done, and you don't really notice it until implementation. So our job is, to the extent possible, to kind of ensure that the work gets done to the point where the value is sort of still positive, so to speak. And we concentrate our work in 4 main activities. We screen the government's legislative program, and for half of the policies that are to be negotiated and the text, we actually submit consultation responses with recommendations on how this policy might be improved to be more digital ready. So every year, every parliamentary cycle, we submit around 100 consultation responses with recommendations to legislation. And in 75% of cases, the recommendations are incorporated in full or in part. However, again, this work is basically just the tip of the iceberg, because again, for this kind of work, this policy design, it's really very subjective. What is the sort of, is it good enough, so to speak? And a good example of that is that every year, around 200 legal acts are presented before Parliament, but those legal acts, they only represent the tip of the iceberg of all the legacy legislation that is in place. In addition to the amendments and the new legislation and so on, there is 90% of legislation every year where everybody says, hey, don't touch it right now. We don't have the time for that. It works fine, so to speak, or nobody really knows where to begin and how to prioritize the revision of this legislation. And looked at that challenge and thought, maybe that's where a Secretariat for Digital Legislation can go in and actually add some value to define we can actually do this work rationally, helped by technology, in order to prioritize sort of revision of legacy legislation. We were fortunate enough to get support from the technical support instrument of the reform in the European Commission and work together with the Public Governance Directorate of the OECD to try to develop a methodology that can give an overview of all the existing portfolio of legacy legislation and try to qualify it into green, yellow, and red, so to speak, where green is legislation that is fine, don't touch it, it's fine. Yellow is there are some issues, it's not sufficiently digital ready. Look at it when you're going to amend it the next time anyway. Or red, there is sufficient, there's significant potential in this legislation. You should look at it at the first chance you get. The tool is still under development, it's being trialed at the moment, but design-wise, it's been divided into two phases. The first stage, which is kind of automated screening of legislation based on, text analysis and heuristics and so on. And the second stage, for a subset of legislation where it's deemed there might be potential, it's kind of triage. Then there is a more manually based assessment of relevant subsets of legislation in order to actually the revision, the legislation or policies most in the revision. Yeah, if you look at the methodology in more depth, you see that there's a number of heuristics that go into this method. Some of it is attributes of the legal act itself, the text as it stands, the concepts being used and so on, citations and other attributes. Other attributes are supporting data around the legislation, data gathered as a result of the legislation, you might say. And a third aspect is, again, assessments by experts about the administrative profile of the legislation of the policy. The method can actually, it's being developed for our needs, but we envision that it might be usable in different contexts. You might calibrate it a little bit in terms of what threshold do you put in order to determine if the potential is green, yellow, or red, for example. It may be different for different legal traditions or different languages, or so on. For example, it may also be different how many resources you have available. And if the data that you have is good enough, you may be able to automate more of the decisions than we may be able to in the Danish context. It really, in the end, depends on the data. So we hope our goal with this method is that it will help us to pick, good policies, or to tell us what policies are good enough and which need to be revised. That's like telling apples apart from oranges, you might say. However, the real mission that we are on is really to stimulate learning and reflection. What is good digital ready policy? And for that, we are delivering is really more mechanisms for people to get closer to being experts at what they're not necessarily experts in, but where they borrow the sort of mechanisms of experts in order to make the best of their time. Policy making is a very time-constrained process. Sometimes the success criterion is be finished by tomorrow, and then you can, make the policy as good as it can be by tomorrow. If we can develop some more tools and mechanisms that can help, general policy officers and legal drafters to become more experts in digital ready legislation, then we will have improved sort of using, we will have improved the lining. How might we do that? You might ask. Well, we are on the verge of choosing the road ahead. And of course, nobody can ignore at the moment the alluring siren song of the large language models. For example, we would be irresponsible if we did not look into the potential of these generic tools the population, the politicians expect it from us, and we will do so as, under responsible circumstances and so on, of course, relative to data. So one quick fix solution in the short term might be to use some of these models to see if they can reproduce some of the results that we get today using manual case working and so on, consultation responses, summarizing large text, for example, identifying aspects of legal acts and so on. This is something we intend to pilot from November, starting from November this year, to see if it can actually, bring us quicker to some results. A longer term ambition, which might even more benefit, would be to make a more bespoke solution that would enable the legal drafters and the policy office to get a better overview of legislation and recognize patterns across legislation, for example, to get an overview that they did not have before, so that in a very short time they might find the best practice in terms of administrative models, digital ready policy, and so on, across a large portfolio of legislative text and policies. Actually, how that might be done specifically, I think for that I will give you the floor.
Thank you, Kristoffer. So yes, I'm going to talk about some work we've been doing in the research, which also relates to how to make structured law and ultimately the code as law. So I have already been introduced, so I don't need to this slide. So before we dream on using AI, as already said by Javier, no one knows really what AI is, right? So we should think about what's the problem we are trying to solve and what is the right kind of AI. There are so many kinds of AI. And the problem here is, right? When is a law detail ready? Well, we have to understand what is the problem of turning law text into systems. To automate or support caseworkers and make self-service solutions. So there's a wide gap here to understand what is really the problem. And then, of course, we have to answer what is the right type of AI. Is it generative AI? Is it machine learning? Is it expert systems where we put in the rules? Is it statistics? Or is it a mixture of these? And I think I'm more on the last part. It's a mixture. We have to use different kinds of AI. And no matter which kind of AI, as many of you already know, they are all about building a model. And model is always an imperfect abstraction. So it will make mistakes. Important, we answer a lot of questions here. To what degree is the answer correct? Is it robust? Will a small change in the input give a completely other answer? Can we explain it? Is it transparent, maintainable? So if we change the law, can we change these models? Is it sustainable? How much energy do we use? And can we hold someone accountable for this model in the end? There are many questions we have to ask. And zoom into Kristoffer's example of what is digital ready law. It is my personal feeling that this is not the right place to just employ a large language model, because they have not been trained on texts that contain the answers to these. You can use it as part of the solution to summarizing data and using answers to humans. Actually answering the question, I don't find them appropriate. But of course, future will tell, and maybe tomorrow will tell. So I don't think we have a free lunch here, but instead try to bridge between the law as text and the law as code approach. And there we can use different kinds of AI. So first of all, we could use NLP and some language models to extract structure from law text. So not only the sections and the paragraphs, but also what are the roles, the actions, the rules found and represent them in a machine-readable format. That could be a legal rule ML or combined with maybe this DCR XML we have developed in Denmark, that can ultimately be executed and used in self-service solutions, guidelines, so we can get more equal access to law. More people can understand what does the law actually say. It's a huge problem in Denmark, and I'm sure around the world. People do not really understand what the law is saying. And then we produce a lot of guidelines in text and have time to read them. So having these enactable digital guidelines could be, and then of course we could also embed them in IT systems. So we don't have a legacy code in there, but we have models that can be maintained. And finally, we could make interactive chatbots where we could actually allow people to interact with the law and get answers to it. Not based on a statistical text model like LLMs, but actually on parent. And we did that as part of a four-year research project in Denmark. We actually made tools and demonstrated that at least in single paragraphs, we could automate the highlighting of the law we could do it in a tool where the lawmakers could actually modify and verify it, simulate what are the possible executions of this law. And when they liked it, they could export it into the dynamic guidelines or even case management systems. And that has been used and is still in use in this governmental agency. And to zoom in, I mean, here's a highlighter where we could see the actions, roles, and rules of an actual paragraph of Danish social service law. And we also implemented NLP support. It can still be improved, so it's not perfect, but it could give suggestions for 75%, I think, of the possible rules and roles. Rules are the most difficult part. And then, of course, we should be aware the law is not 100% automatable. There's a lot of discretion still there. There's a lot of implicit parts of the law that we need to annotate these boxes. So we could have several layers here that describe exactly what is in the text and the layer that describes what is. And it was not made in a university alone. We had 3 universities. We had a lot of companies involved trying out the technology. We had partners around Europe, and we also have the state authority in Denmark and some unions looking could try how this technology implements. So I added some examples. So we did a GDPR guideline. So the existing one, this was from the university, was just a PDF decision tree. It was ambiguous. No researcher really understood what it was saying. And you could not track if they actually were following this. So we could, in a few hours, make a detailed knowledge graph of this guideline that could give an executable guideline. And of course, if you disagreed with the rule, you could just change the rule, and then you had a new. We also did it for COVID-19 guidelines that changed, every month. We had a new guideline what to do. And that could also be made in less than a day. And then we had this digital form. Type in when did you get infected? Are you living with someone infected? When did you get your last vaccine? And instead of having this from the knowledge graph. Our vision, jointly with Kristoffer's office and the local government Denmark, which is the umbrella organization of municipalities in Denmark, is to make a feedback loop here. So when we have this structured representation of law, we can start to feed it into the office of law and use their expert knowledge, but also knowledge from people who actually implement systems in law. I mean, we have a lot of failed IT projects in Denmark because law is changing while they make the systems. And there we could use machine learning based AI to actually train on this knowledge, find common difficult patterns in law, and then feed that back to the lawmakers so we can have. So that's our ultimate wish. That's what I've.
Both Chris and Thomas, I really take a couple of good messages. First of all, I think the interesting approach of having a business unit in the Agency for Digital Government that supports the digital ready policy. You have a lot of pages to analyze this, but also this message that Thomas brought of we need to have different tools. Not everything is a hammer. Then we start only seeing deals everywhere. AI is not a single thing; it's just an umbrella of a plethora of technologies. Actually, seeing examples of how digital ready policies can work out end to end is something very interesting. So many takeaways from you, but maybe we go and check how the Slido is going. These are the results of the questions. There is a draw, no? So there are two options on efforts that are done at organizations and member states. Of course, manual reviews is something that I would say is technologically low, although effort big, and also the marking. The marking is something that the marking in law that is also coming from some of the tools the Commission is developing, and other techniques like AI and identification of common patterns are less common. No, but at least you can see that that there is already thinking in organizations and institutions on the use of techniques to improve interoperability across policy areas. So thank you very much to both of you. Questions will come for sure after the presentation of all the colleagues. Now we are going to move to another very interesting question, which is how do we screen existing policy? I think Chris was mentioning it at the beginning. How many pages do we have in the acquis, the legal acquis of every member state or the Commission? And we have Vidas Daudaravicius. I hope I pronounced it well. Vidas is a fellow from the colleague from the GRC. He has been a researcher for more than 20 years in the field of natural language processing, artificial intelligence, etc. He's part of the data governance and service team in the GRC, in charge of the implementation of the data strategy of the GRC, and also in charge of a fantastic tool which is called SeTA that he will be presenting. Again, still homework to you. You have another question that Vidas put into all the audience. So the idea is to know what are the must tools in policy. What do you use like every day if you are trying to screen existing policies? Is Google? Is Microsoft Bing? Is ChatGPT? Is ULEX? It's the OP data portal. Is SETA? Let's see what you have at your end. Now, Vidas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So today I will talk a little bit about a tool which we are developing at the GFC Center. So it's still in development, but we are trying to put it in production. So really scale it. And the idea behind the SETA tool is there is a really big need to support policy officers in screening legislation. So, and what is SETA? It stands for Semantic Text Analyzer and more. Analyzer. So, and the idea here is that SETA provides a service for discovery of information, also for operation in policy screening. So it's full text-based search. So it usually when we have services inside the institutes, we have kind of a full text search, usually with SQL-based searches. So we use neural search, so we really use semantic approach, not only keyword-based search. So we investigate how concepts in this text are used. So we also support them on that and how it looks. For instance, at GRC last year, we developed portfolios where domains and work areas GRC is working. And one of the topics is defined as shaping a green transition in sustainable and fair Europe. And when I would ask you, sustainable Europe, describe what it is. You just quickly say sustainable Europe. That's good, but not clear what it is. And so SETA tool analyzes these concepts inside the various texts. And when you insert the keyword sustainable Europe, it's you suggestions and related terms that describe that concept. You see that it's sustainable economy, sustainable society, competitive economy in many various ways, and it allows you quickly kind of understand domain and how wide it is. So, and even you can ask not only for the specific terms, but also names and various acronyms. Also it expands. So it's one of advantages. And usually when we search for information, we know how to use keywords. Keyword-based search is very simple. Many systems are using, so we're still using that approach as well because it's used and accepted. So, and when you search, you can find, let's say, the Sustainable Europe by 2023 as a top document. So SETA allows you to search not only base keyword, you can use the same keyword as a free text, I call it, or a document. You just can type Sustainable Europe just as a keyword. You can type Sustainable Europe in in health area. Just you express what you want to do in text. And the SETA analyzes it, describes, and then provides you again documents that are related to your query as your description. So, and at top document would be European Union strategy for sustainable Europe development. And you see there is no keyword sustainable Europe. We find these documents as most the document. And so you can use a hybrid approach using keywords and mix with your free text. So it means you can rank documents by semantic similarity, but also can include only those documents that contain specific keywords. So it's kind of a hybrid approach. You can search in various ways. And SETA is not only a search tool or discovery tool information, but also it's about collaboration. And SETA is developed currently in such a way that any user of a SETA service permission create his own, you can call it already data space. So data space and put their data into SETA engine to share that discoverability of that information with others. People can join that community. They will be able to find that information. So it's not only that one service, one of a service responsible for testing data and making it searchable. Also, it's a community tool. So, and just the question here is why SETA? Because, you know, we have tools like Bing, and many of you are using it. And here is that take this search engines. When you will quickly find that you're not interested in officers such. Just don't care about them. They care about the majority of people who needs fast information, fast food, to get information on the first page. And the matters for this big search engine is that we care only about first page, about first 10 results. And even when you find something interesting, when you go to second page, usually I might ask you, example, you go to second, third, and fourth page. Often you find useful information on these pages. Kind of, you're not sure. So, and the SETA focus is not that on the first page, but really on screening on many documents and to allow policy officers to create this, we could call it policy wallet, to work on this. And that's why it's important. And that's why SETA is here. And as I said, it's a SETA tool target is policy officers, that information matters, and we help policy officers to find all information what is related to the wallet, and it's collaboration tool. And usually inside the institution, it's very important to make your data discoverable inside the institution, not outside or in the search engines. So, and also ranking of results is transparent because we use these neural search engines and it's described and you know how it is being ranked. And if you look at Google and other search engines, you never know what it is behind. It's not clear. That's why it's important to have this transparency I mentioned. And also, this SETA tool is seen as a data reuse tool. For example, when you ingest, it's not that you search only for that, but also you can reuse metadata of these documents you store in search engine. And when you find similar document, it means you can reuse this metadata or new document, drafting document. And for example, you can put several documents that covers accessibility topic, have new document, and you can look for some paragraphs and to check if at least one paragraph covers accessibility topic. If it covers, then it's okay. Then it's your new policy document covers that topic. So it helps screening and development of new policy. So thanks.
Interesting here is this tool selection. No, so the idea of going for a commercial tool like Google, Bing, or even ChatGPT, which is something we know from our day-to-day life. But then there is the bias on the transparency, which for me is quite important when it comes to policy design. No, so being sure that the summaries, the feedback you get are actually non-biased, and especially when you are in the policy making position. And then the idea of having the power of a search engine in a tool which is targeted for policy makers. I think these are the two beauties of SeTA. But then let's see what the colleagues in the audience are. I think we have more than around 50 people in online, plus the colleagues in the room. Let's see how the results are going in the slide. So if the colleagues can showcase this in the screen. And for those that are good at maths, you might see that the results that they don't add 100%. This is because it's a multiple choice answer, so people can choose one or two. So there are people choosing two or more of the results. So it's not that our mathematics are not very good at the commission. It's configured like maybe not the most user friendly. Evidently, URLEX features high because this is the repository of translation. And also the open data portal. So I'm happy to see that the tools of the commission are featuring high in the ranking. And then of course the commercial was quite high for ChatGPT, being a relatively new tool in the market, and not bad for SeTA. So Vidas, kudos for you and the team. Let's now move to another topic that I think is also quite interesting. We're going to speak about regulatory reporting metadata vocabularies. I think it's important in an environment and the importance of vocabularies to make sure that we actually understand the same thing when we are speaking about different topics, as in particular in a space like the European Union, in which we have multilingualism, multiculturalism. So sometimes we might not understand exactly the same when we are saying a particular word. This is the key when we speak about vocabularies, especially to vocabularies that are linked to regulatory obligations. So I'm going to call two colleagues to the stage. One is Cecile. Cecile is a business analyst in Díez. She has been working in interoperability for, I think, almost 20 years, if I'm not wrong. And also Monica Palmirani. Monica Palmirani is a full professor of computer science and law in the University of Bologna. She has extensive experience in the world of standards, especially in the world of standardizing legislation in the form of XML. And she's also a member of the OASIS, group. And I also have a question for you. We are not starting with your homework. So the idea here is to understand when it comes to reducing the regulatory reporting burden, which is quite high, I would say, when it comes to regulation. How important would you consider the creation of a vocabulary for reporting obligations will be? So do we need such a vocabulary or not? And then this one is a single choice, I think. So this time it will add 100%. So Cecile and Monica, the floor is yours.
So thank you. I will first give the context for this project, and then the brain of the vocabulary will explain further in details the project. So in the context, I will first explain to you why we choose regulatory reporting as a field of experimentation, which are the challenges that we can notice in this field, which organizational measures we already took, which are the semantic measures we are taking, and which are the expected benefits that we expect from this work. And then Monica will follow with the content of the work. So why did we take regulatory reporting? Why did we jump on this topic quite some time ago? Is because we understood that it was clearly a cross-cutting process for all policy domains, and that in its heart of the topic, it's about exchange of data. And that what we could notice is that the exchange of data was not really done in a digital way. So it could still be with files. Well, it was already maybe digitalized, but in a very, very low fashion. So we thought that there was a huge interest of bringing interoperability in that area. And what were the challenges that we can face? The first one is also becoming gets political attention, is that this vocabulary obligations become a high burden for SMEs, reducing their competitiveness, and that they are also difficult to implement in all levels of administration. And for instance, the Sustainable Europe increased a lot the number of reporting obligations. And I think that it's from this moment that SMEs start trying and say, no, we cannot anymore cope with this high level of pressure. And so it means that these people, you need to imagine that in companies, there are people that daily tasks are only to enter data in several applications, several tools, and sometimes it's about almost the same data, but just asked at different times, and about the same things after all. So this shows really a need for doing something here. And then what we also understood is that each policy didn't look at the other. So they all need to get data to implement, to monitor the implementation of the policy, but they don't know what the other domain is asking for. Sometimes there are data that could be used by received or collected by others that could be reused, and this does not happen very much. And then also at all levels of administration, there are the administration, they don't look at each other to know what the others are asking for. So it means that no one has an overarching view on what is requested. And each time there is a new obligation that is set, it is not taking into consideration or not sufficiently taking into considerations existing reporting obligations. From that, we understood that instruments and tools that are in hands of policy officers that are really insufficient. And so its endeavor is really to start to have a basis, the anchor for new tools and new instruments to be created. And what we did, so to start with, we thought, okay, let's keep digital ready in mind, and we built, started with organizational measures by creating a regulatory reporting community of practice, by which we could invite multidisciplinary teams involving IT people, business people, so the ones creating these reporting obligations, to share knowledge, to share practices, share issues, and also to share a view on a path on where to go. This started by getting a definition for regulatory reporting. What is it? Because before that, there was no definition. I wouldn't say that this definition is perfect, because now that there is a political interest on this, we see that we can improve it. But at least we started somewhere, you see? And then these people agreed on a process, a streamlined process. And believe it or not, there was no streamlined process before that. So now everybody can talk the same language about what it is and how to proceed with reporting obligations. And so from that point, we accessed really a wealth of information with their needs, their challenges, and also initiatives. And from these initiatives, we gathered, so they had, some of them had built tools to enter reporting obligations on a manual basis. And there we thought, yes, we have something to do also to take semantic measures. that's where we launched this project, this SORTIS project that Monica will present in detail. And in this project, we thought, okay, we have a set of reporting obligations that have been identified by users. Let's use natural language processing techniques to understand patterns of expression of these reporting obligations, by which we could then characterize reporting obligations and finally create this vocabulary. And I can tell you that from we cannot really identify patterns for all the text. So there is a high volatility of how these reporting obligations are drafted. It's crazy how the creativity of people, it's fabulous, fabulous. But still, we could catch some characteristics by which Monica that she will present. And why do we want this? Well, so we expect, where we go with this is that by creating a standardized vocabulary about reporting obligations, we could, creating new obligations, design them in a streamlined way from the start, and reducing this heterogeneity and entropy of how they could look like. So we really hope that we can come to a point where a policy officer, when drafting a new obligation, is accompanied to use always the same concepts to define a reporting obligation. Then we hope that by algorithmic processes, we are in this starting doing that, we will be able to mark the existing acquis with this vocabulary, so that then it will be much easier for somebody setting a new obligation to know which obligations exist in the same domain and on which basis he could rely on existing data and avoid creating a new burden for policy officers. And I'm sure that there will be plenty of more use cases in the implementation that this vocabulary will bring. So it's only a start of something. And with this, I think I will pass the floor to...
Before Monica starts, just a reminder, the Q&A is open throughout the whole session, so don't hesitate in asking anything at any moment. Sorry, Monica, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the invitation. So now I present a little bit the first results of the analysis and a preliminary ontology of the vocabulary already presented for modeling regulatory reporting. And let me say that the main goal is to use metadata for modeling the main building blocks of the language sentence included inside of the legislation, and to capture the meaningful of the legislation and also of the regulatory obligations. So what we want is to have an ontology for interoperability, but also to discover patterns inside of a legislation, and so to have a sort of standardization also using legal drafting tools for composing since the beginning a correct requirements of requested ontology. This project is conducted with my colleague Ashwin Eto of University of Liège, and we are in tandem for producing the result of this project. So the main approach is to use an ontology, and using the ontology, we use the ontology as an input of artificial intelligence. So not only the text, but also the ontology for the main classes and the categorization for producing some more semantics inside of AI model. We use also Akomantoso. Probably you know Akomantoso standard, but it's use AKN for EU. So we tag already the legislation, and we use the descriptors of the tagging as a semantic signal inside of the text. And we reuse obviously all the LI metadata coming from the publication of detecting the function of the legislation. So this is an example of regulatory reporting. So someone needed to produce a report addressed to the European Parliament and Council every 5 years, and starting from one date, probably finishing another date, and producing something concerning a topic. So we wanted to extract using AI and ontology these building blocks and to produce events. So some events semi-automatically annotated in order to produce a regularity of events that the people can check and to use and reuse inside of the tools like editor. Why not the editor take these events and put an alert every time to the legislator or the legal drafting, say, pay attention, you need to have all these reporting in mind. So this is what we have done. So the ontology is composed by object, so the report, what we need, reports of action, of output of action. There are agents. Agents place roles. Roles change over time. This is a novelty inside of ontology. We have embedded inside temporal analysis, a temporal model, because one of the missing points in many ontology is the temporal aspect of a legislation. What is ready today and valid today is not valid tomorrow, so we need to track the time. And then obviously the action and the topic. So this is more or less what we have detected. This is a preliminary ontology that includes a lot of already ontology used inside of the European Commission in the large panel of interoperability, so LI, but also others. And this is a preliminary analysis of this. We use unique identifier of a legislation coming from the publication office, all the LI methodology and the data. We reused many, but not limited to this. And also, as I said, also the temporal information. So we are using hybrid AI. Also other mentioned before, AI is an umbrella. We need to integrate many technologies in order to mitigate the risk coming from one and to another. So using machine learning, I have some risk. I can mitigate the machine learning risk using semantic web and document-driven approach of XML for mitigating some risk like non-explicability or not understanding the semantic or others. So using this hybrid approach, we integrate all the techniques that we have in a mix in order to produce the best that we can for the legislator and to cope with the digital-ready policy. So this is a pipeline. We start from ALI ontology and also metadata. We get some signal inside of the legislation using these inputs. I have transformed all the Pharmex XML of a publication office in a Commandoso, also the consolidated text, and using the Commandoso, we have applied also AI classification. We compared the classification with the database for detecting and measure the quality and of the classification. And after we extracted the knowledge for modeling in ontology RDF. And last but not least, the real obligation, that is not the request, the real obligation, the intention is to model in Liga ULML. To know that also you are using Liga ULML, because for the obligation, that is a complex deontic ontological parts, we need something more sophisticated like Liga ULML. So the vocabulary taking into account a temporal model, this is one of the tricky in many applications of AI. The AI is timeless, is flat, without structure, without time, without derogation, suspension, retroactivity. So pay attention, because otherwise we can get something that is technical sound, but the legal point of view, not at all. So we have embedded inside of our model the temporal view, and we are very lucky because ALI and the Commandoso were designed both for managing the temporal aspects. So when I have this record of extraction, I don't need only to detect that there is some characters of differences. So the AI can say, oh, some characters of differences, there is some vectors, distance. We need to understand that these differences affect strongly the events of obligation, because this is a new deadline. It's not only a set of characters. So I need to detect these. I needed to accommodate my graphs and to connect you can see the versioning of the main legislation, and I need to connect the new obligation in the correct bubble, not in general, not the first one, but just to connect it in the correct point of a line of the versioning. This is very important. Otherwise, we have super AI, amazing, but answer it to a not correct answer. And what is good for this approach? We would like to reach the searchability of the obligations of the request, but also to have a tracking over the time of the modification of the obligation. So many times in the legislation, we have a double, 3 times or 4 times the same obligation because legislation loses the track of the policy. And so we wanted to maintain a monitoring of the policy, of the events, of the obligation, and also data analytics, and also future application that you can't imagine now. So thank you so much. This is a main field.
I think I would like to say that this has been a fantastic panel in terms of timekeeping. We are just on time. So this means that we have 25 minutes for the panel discussion and for the questions, which I think is very interesting. In any case, first, before let's check the results of the Slido poll. So I will ask the team if possible to display them in the screen, so we see the relevance of the creation of these vocabularies for the audience. So is it coming? I think Cecile and Monica did a fantastic work, because almost the absolute majority of seeing this as a must. So very good, I think a very convincing presentation. Let's start with the questions. And I would like to start with a general question to all the members of the panel. What I would say is that whomever from you feels wants to contribute, jump in. And then I have some dedicated questions to some of the panelists. And my question is the following. AI has been here for a while. We have had even winters of AI. Some of you might remember them. So my question is AI really a game changer for policy making now? And if so, which technology? Because AI is an umbrella, so there is advanced statistics can be seen as AI, and they have been with us for a while. So the question is this the moment of really changing the game with AI or not? So is it generative AI? Is it language processing? Is it a combination? I don't know. So maybe who wants to? Chris, please.
If I may. Of course, yes, as you say, the technologies have been here for a long time and so on. From a practitioner's perspective, in terms of the government being able to and willing to invest in maturing the technologies and making them customized for your purposes, you shouldn't underestimate as a civil servant on the floor, so to speak, you shouldn't underestimate the impact of something being highly visible to the decision makers. The previous wave of digital self-service solutions, at least in our country, was to some extent, and the revolution of apps and so on, to some extent driven by our director general coming into the office and saying, my grandchildren just showed me this on the iPad. Can't we do this? So from this very perspective, I think large language models and so on have done us at least a favor in terms of you're no longer viewed upon as a kind of technical specialist with no reality sense of reality. If you propose, we should actually look into the potential here. So in our view, it's viewed now at the top level as a burning platform. We have to see how these technologies can be leveraged to our advantage. So yes, there is something qualitatively new here, and a part of it is big impact in
the political impetus that we have now. So I have Zsofia, and then maybe Thomas or Zsofia.
Yeah, so for me, maybe because we come from this mindset, I would say, yes, super new technologies, but we need the people. And I also hear a little bit here, we need sponsorship, and then we need the desk officers there who grasp it and who are able to use these tools. So technology is one thing for me, but preparing the people that even if you are not the technology guy, but you can understand what it brings to you, it's important. So for me, it's still taking a bit of time and this cultural change. And also it has the limitations. I just heard from Thomas that it's no free lunch. It's not, that doesn't work in each time.
I'm really curious to hear Thomas' views here. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, I very much agree. I mean, so the hype on generative AI creates this attention to it that we can use, but of course we should resist trying to jump to the quick fixes, because as Monica also say, we need the hybrid approaches to actually ensure that we can the solutions accountable to what the answers we get, and actually trust the AI models we build. So that's it has been a challenge ever since IT was introduced in our society, that we tend to be too ambitious, try to build something that we are not ready actually yet. We can use this hype to bring attention and funding, and then hopefully some experts make it.
I don't know if Monica or Vidas over there in the table would like to add something.
Yes, I think it's a good time to adopt AI, but in the meantime, we need a really interdisciplinary group because time to time, the technical approach alone is focused on index at the end and to measure the performance and how many tokens. So it's not enough totally. We need to integrate legal studies, legal knowledge and ethical knowledge inside of the group for providing the sort of explainability of the results and assessment and accountability that the machine can provide.
I think this is quite a very good point. So once we have broke the ice, let's go to some, let's say, targeted questions. And the first one is for Javier, and I think it's a very, it's a very sensitive topic because we touch about justice and we touch about personal data. And, here, when we speak about AI and personal data, there are a lot of questions. And Javier, the question from the audience is, what are the safeguards, personal data protection, that you are thinking of and putting in place? I think it's something that you will be thinking a lot in the ministry, right?
It was a limitation at the beginning because we didn't have the capacity to use AI systems with data of individual bodies. So we had to put and to buy an infrastructure and to build a team that did all the learning and the training on the house, on premise. But nowadays it's not a limitation. What is a risk for us, I think, more than personal data that we use as IT team to develop services, is the use of new AI services that do our workers, our civil servants, with personal data, with documents, because they are not protected. So we are not limiting, for instance, we are not forbidding the use of Gen AI, for instance, and they can use with judicial documents. So we are more worried in issuing policies in order they attend to those policies in order that we don't have any risk. But actually, at the moment, we don't have problems with the use of personal data in order to train an AI system.
So thank you, Javier. And I have another question. This time for Chris and Thomas. And they were explaining the system, the algorithmic system they have to screen existing legislation. And the question is how straightforward was to teach that algorithm. So was it a complicated process? Did it take you a lot of time? So can you explain us a little bit the experience?
Yes, I would say it's still baby steps for us. We are. It went a little fast in my presentation. We are not today at the stage where we actually have an AI-based algorithm or solution to assist us in the screening. We are at a stage now where we have a methodology in being trialed that is going to give us results, and we are almost halfway through the trial now, and you see that the methodology it's promising, but it's very, very dependent on the culture and the level of the sort of the quality of data being available, and that varies a lot from agency to agency at the moment. So plenty of caveats going forward. I don't know if it's too early to say anything about optimistic we are about.
I mean, in the research project on actually marking up text involved legal scholars and caseworkers, and there we have very promising results of first being able to understand these markup tools. Then the next step we hope is to take some of the manual knowledge from the department of Chris and use that in expert system to detect patterns of law and find out it's easy to.
This is actually confirming this quality of the data is directly proportional to the quality of the output we are going to get, and we still have to work a lot on maybe Vidas and one of the colleagues is asking about the setting factors of SeTA, so the competitive advantage of SeTA compared to other search tools that we have seen in the presentation. So I don't know, maybe it's a sales speech what you can do here, Vidas.
Let's say that we, by Google and all these big engines, got some sleepy. But and we think that search as such is already solved, and we need to work on that field anymore. So, and I think this is wrong kind of. We should really take care about how we search and where we search. And so this is one, I would say, and another what is advantage of SeTA as such, let's say, what we are developing is that it's very transparency. What we want to bring is really to understand what we do and how we do. So this is advantage. And another one is that we are flexible to target, let's say, to our needs. Because if this big search engines are universal, kind of try to fit everybody. But in principle, it's very difficult to do this to, let's say, policy officer needs when we need to screen let's say, legislation and studies. So on, it's very complex, and you saw in this slide of it, selected Eurolex as a must tool. Actually, it misses a lot of information studies. It contains a lot of information, really, how you develop a policy. You are missing in the Eurolex that part. That's why currently SeTA, what we are doing is really not work on the legislation part, but all information what is related to. So this is why what is.
I think that last bit very important now, because you can see the final text, but you don't know what to produce it, the alternatives that were studies, impact assessments, etc., which is also part of the policy making process, and it's really interesting to understand why the regulator or the legislator went to a particular solution. This and transparency for me are really a must. I will go for a question to Monica on the one line, and then maybe also open the floor here in the room. We have also an hybrid meeting here. So Monica, it's a question linked to the category agent in the ontology, no? And the question is if it can differentiate between the agent that has to submit a report from the agent that has to receive the report.
Yes, for sure. The model is based on the pattern agent role. Is modifiable over time. So we have the agent that play the role to ask, so they require the other CEO or the others, so the role is connected to the agent. And so we have this kind of a well-known pattern agent role that distinguish easily all the time the role of the agent. And
maybe we now move to the audience, and then we'll get back to the chat. So, colleagues in the room, do you have any questions to the panelists you would like to ask? Just raise your hand, please.
I'm really interested in all the use cases or proofs of concept that have been developed or are currently under development. My question would be, among others, I mean, I would ask any of these. We're interested here in interoperability. So we're interested in being, let's say, platforms to advance legislation, or let's say, to make the life of drafters or politicians across the policy-making cycle easier, to make everything more efficient and so on. So I suppose all of these tools are to a certain extent easy or more or less to be incorporated to existing solutions. And I'm specifically targeting LEOs here, or EDIT. So the question is very, very simple. How easy, let's target, let's say, this. People have asked, and I will present this repeatedly, to have search functions, EDIT or LEOs. Could, for instance, this tool be integrated so that you have, let's say, some sort of user functionality there, directly ask and then incorporate the result of the action within the editing process? Would that be possible?
Develop SETA tool. As such, we have in mind not only that we develop user interface, but also with APIs, so that machines can communicate between So, and it's feasible. From interoperability point of view, I would say SETA tool is not an idea, but the vision is that we have all the legislation from member states as well, and such a way that, and I believe that here is that we have search in of Eurolex, let's say in Eurolex of European legislation, but we have national legislation, and we don't have this connection. So, and that's why this, when I presented this collaborative work, it means that member states also could ingest that data, so that when you search in for, let's say, some interoperability topic, specific topic, you would also find that legislation, how it is reflected in member state, or in all member states. And it means that, again, it's a big question again about multilingualism. We are trying to solve, because it's when you search in, let's say, Lithuania, you also want to find the same it's reflected in English legislation, let's say, or in Danish or states. So that's why I see here big opportunity here. It takes time.
So as part of our research project, we made service rule engines that can be integrated management tools very easy as a REST service. And we demonstrated it could work on Danish legislation. And then, of course, to move out and get interoperability standards like legal rule, ML, and ontologies, so we can agree on these reporting actions, for instance, across Europe. So we don't have to implement it nationally every time. And that would be the
Anyone else would like to come back after SORTIS? If not, there is another question over there and another one over there. So,
thank you very much for the presentations. Just would like to know regarding the policy design. Are you, I mean, any of you developing some tools to assess the impact? I think a lot of team makers are interested in having an idea of the policy impact of this decision, this drafting versus that drafting. So is there any development in your administration about this one?
maybe I will turn to from Denmark, because maybe you might have something to add.
I'd be happy to, yes. I didn't go through all the tools in our toolbox for the presentation. It was time constrained. But our philosophy that the more you can put into the hands of the end users, the policy officers, the more to make them experts or to help get to the results quickly, the better, has stood for quite a few years. That means we at the moment offer what we call an interactive self-assessment tool for policy drafters when they have to do the impact assessments. And you have to keep in mind, impact assessments in the Danish context is not the same as impact assessment in the commissioned context. In the Danish tradition is relatively sort of pragmatic. It's okay to just focus on the beef, if you will excuse my language. So that's a philosophy of the interactive tool that we offer at the moment. They basically answer roughly 20 questions about this and this and this, and then they get in the other they get, okay, you should probably look more into this and this, go through this like a bullet of lists that you should probably document in order to get to a result. It's a version 1.0 tool, but it's an example of something that helps target the impact assessment.
Zsofia, then Thomas, Monica, and Cecile. Okay, so Zsofia.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that while our team is directly not developing such, but we have the privilege to look in the member states projects financed under the technical support instrument. And I'm aware that in Portugal, they are developing a tool to try to give some indicative even cost estimates to regular.
Also, just want to mention our collaborators in local government Denmark, which is the umbrella organization of municipalities. They have made a database of an overview of forms for applying for social benefits and all other kinds of applications from citizens, and then law text. But that will of course be used as a basis for a tool for impact analysis. Okay, what is the cost if you change the law? How many forms that are potentially embedded in IT systems to be changed? So that's, I think, that an idea I think that would be intended outside Denmark.
Cecile?
Yes, so this is a topic of impact, ex post impact, because ex ante is another stuff, but ex post analysis of effectiveness of the law needs a lot of data coming from the society, especially for the company or the company association. So also in Italy, the government is thinking about, and also other institutions, to analyze the data, the big data collected by, for instance, the association of the company budget or the statistical information coming from the school, of the families, of the status of the families, of the judge concerning the divorce or similar, and to collect this information and to match with the legislation in order to understand if a phenomena that a legislation want to cope with produced the effect expected. What is a problem I envision, scientifically speaking, is missing a robust measurement indicators for that. So the database are many, the big data are very, and artificial intelligence can produce some correlations, but the very key point is how we can measure the effectiveness because we don't have a standard for measure that. So the European Commission, in my opinion, can start to have a common indicators for do so in order to have a common benchmarking tools for performing these real scientific goals.
Well, on my side, it was in fact a bit in the same direction, but that I believe that by standardizing these vocabularies, we can also more easily connect with statistical databases to measure ex ante even the potential impact on businesses, potential impact on, so depending on the statistical database. And I think it was part of our discussion when you were developing your methodology that in fact to qualify better how the impact of the potential measures, this connection with statistical database would really simplify the life of to evaluate this legislation. So, and I believe also that we have something to explore that we did not yet explore in the in these innovative solutions of our component 5 about having regulatory sandboxes, but we did not explore sufficiently yet how we could connect data spaces with law in draft, not yet done. So to like a virtual, testing the things virtually before implementing it. We are very far from that, but it's okay. It's it's in our mind, but the path seems very long. It's a long road ahead.
Yes, Javier, you have some experience to share from the Spanish government.
Well, I don't have past experience in general regulation, but I have experience on digital regulation. And what I can say is that we are actually providing a lot of tools to our managers in order that they can follow the business indicators and have measured the impact of the digital regulation. For instance, if I put in a law that you can use automation in, I don't know, in some processes, in general for any public administration, we have measured the difference, I mean, in the business cases. And, or for instance, in regulation, we tried to, this that was paralyzed by the government change that's going to be in Spain. We wrote an article in artificial intelligence in play, this system. So it was sure that all the stoppers that we have actually to put AI to work in some cases would give us results of a lot of improvement in efficiency, for instance. Actually, nowadays, we are measuring the workload, the tons of CO2, we are measuring also the economic gains we get for our workers, for our own administration, but also for the other administration we work with. We are also using a standard measuring costs. I think it's come from Europe, and I think it's a bit old, by the way.
Adapt or better regulation.
Yeah, but it was very, very famous in the past. Yes, we usually do that kind of measures.
Thank you very much. So it was a very nice question because it triggered the reaction of all the panelists. So we'll take this last question from the colleague in the room, and then we will wrap up because the coffee is waiting. So please go ahead.
My question was actually for Javier, and I'm wondering if you've already addressed it, but in your presentation, you mentioned that you are deriving a set of indicators. Now,
I don't hear very well. I don't know if you can speak a bit up.
during your presentation, you mentioned that you are starting to derive some indicators from the work you are doing. Are these indicators on top of the ones you just described? And if so, can you elaborate a little bit on that point?
I don't know if you know.
No, because
At the same indicators. I mentioned more that at this moment at the presentation.
Okay, so we came to the end of this panel. I want to do a bit of wrap up, maybe taking some messages that were important for me. And in that sense, I will start with Javier. I think that Javier mentioned something which is very important: the potential of AI to change the life of people for the good. This is very important. Most of us, we work for the public sector, and using technology for the good is something I think it's a driver. No, I think Zsofia reminded us that the digital ready policy making is cross policy. This is not only for digital policies, for all policy areas, and it has to be thought from the beginning. You start thinking on the implementation of the legal implementation of the policies from the beginning. And I think it was coming very handy with the presentation of Chris and Thomas, where they explain a real life experience how the Danish government is creating a business unit to help towards ready policy making, actually implementing real tools to do so. And I personally liked a lot the use case that Thomas presented on an end-to-end loop for digital ready policy making. I think Vidas presented us quite a very interesting tool as real competitive advantage and transparency, explainability, and being targeted for policymakers is something that is really important. Cecile also highlighted the need of common vocabularies, especially for that we can use AI for those purposes. And from Monica, I actually liked a lot, and I took notes that can have technically sound solutions that are legally useless. No, and this is very important. So it's not. This is not a matter of engineers. Multidisciplinarity, you mentioned that. I think is important. AI is not a technical matter. It's a matter that should involve another element you mentioned, ethical aspect. No, I think multidisciplinarity and ethical aspect. So from the very inspiring words of Javier, AI for the good, to thinking on this from an ethical point of view or a multidisciplinary point of view, I have the feeling this was a very rich panel, and I would like the colleagues to put their hands together for this interesting set of panelists. Thank you very much, and let's go for a coffee. So let's give them a round of applause. We reconvene at 20 to 4. 20 to 4. Okay?